The next bias is what is called instrumentation. And that happens when, if you are doing a research and the type of tools or type of measurement you're using to measure a certain variable is changed, then what is going to happen is probably you're going to see a change in the outcome that you measured. The easiest example to give is if you're measuring a mental health issue, let's say PTSD or depression or anxiety. Well, there are many types of tools out there that can be used to assess depression. And therefore, if you were using one of these methods, مثلا Beck depression inventory, and at a certain point in time you decided to change and not use the Beck inventory, rather use, I think, the Harvard Trauma Questionnaire, something like that, or the DCA, you're going to see differences in the measure. How would you know if the differences that occurred are due to the fact that you changed your instrumentation or due to your actual intervention? And think about it, مثلا, if you are trying to measure, let's say you're trying to measure fasting sugar. Before you did your intervention, and your intervention could be diet or could be some sort of medication, you recruited a group of people and you measured their fasting blood sugar using the finger prick tool. And you get the reading using these machines, small machines. Then the next time after they went through the diet, you took a blood sample and you sent it to the lab. Well, you're running a risk of finding a difference that is not due to the fact that that your diet or drug actually did anything. No, you're just going to see a difference because you change your instrumentation. The point is, plan your study well and try to use the same instrument. And I'm saying this out of experience. In one point in time, we changed our instrument because the instrument we were using and we're trying to assess depression was not very specific, was not very sensitive. For those that remember what specificity and sensitivity are, we needed something better, and therefore we changed the tool. The problem is the tool was used the first time we went and assessed the mental health situation of the general public, and the next time we went, after 2 years, we're using a different tool. It made it difficult to compare the results of the first time we measured and the second time we measured. The sixth bias we have is sometimes people refer to it as a mortality bias. Not really that people are dying, but people are leaving your study, or the attrition bias or the loss to follow-up bias. This happens typically when you have a follow-up study, a prospective study, concurrent, and you're doing years of follow-up. And as you're following up people over time, what happens is people are going to change address, people are going to move out, people are going to, you're going to lose their trace, you're going to lose their address. So you end up losing a big chunk of your respondents. The problem occurs is when those that are lost are inherently different than those that stayed in your study. And therefore, they might impact the results of your study, just because they're no longer part of your study. Of course, there are ways that you should try to use to minimize the loss to follow-up, try to figure out a way to reach them even if they change their address. So if you have a next of kin address or telephone, you can contact them. But you can think about this example, مثلا, there's a lot of studies nowadays about refugees. And refugees, they move a lot. Maybe they were in one camp and then maybe they're going to try to reach another country, and you lose them. You don't know what happened to them. And that could cause a problem, because think about it. Maybe for those that try to leave the refugee camp, try to go to another country, those are the ones that actually can afford it, and therefore maybe they were more educated, or maybe they had connections, or maybe they are, and therefore they're different from those that stay in the refugee camp. Therefore, you're going to see results that are atypical of what you'd have seen if these people had stayed. Similar issue is when you're also trying to recruit a group of people in your study. You may have a group of people that refuse to participate, and those that refuse to participate is when refuses to participate. And again, the same problem. If those that refuse to participate are different from those that agree to participate, you have a problem. Now, there are techniques that you can use to try to see how much of a problem this is. And so, for example, what we did in one of our studies, we were doing a survey, a cross-sectional study. We're trying to recruit people. And what we did is we were going to the villages, knocking on their doors, and trying to survey these people in their homes. Some people just flat out said no, and we don't want to participate in your study. What we did is we said, okay, thank you very much. I understand that, but do you mind if I just ask you like two questions? And we asked them about like their age. Obviously, their gender was very obvious, and the family number. The reason you do that is you try to collect as much as possible data from those that refuse to participate to compare them to those that accept to participate and see how much of a difference there is, or maybe there's not. If there is a difference between those that refuse to participate and those that accept to participate, then you have a problem, because you say, well, it means that those that accepted to participate are different, and that might cause a problem of my results for my results. Whereas if they were similar, then you'd feel much comfortable discussing your results. In a loss to follow up, you already have a lot of information of those that you lost to follow up, because to start with, they were part of your study. And therefore, you can also try to do some comparison between those that remain in the study and those you've lost to follow up, to see how much of a difference exists between those that uh, remain in the study and those that left the study. If you were trying to do a study and there's no way that you can get data on those that refuse to participate, maybe it's a survey, online survey, an email, and therefore there's no way you can reach those that refuse to participate, there is a technique that you can do. That what you do is you compare those that were very easy to recruit in your study, so those are the people that responded within the first 3, 4, 5, 6 days, to those that took them maybe 2 weeks to respond to your survey, because the second group will probably resemble those that refuse to participate. You can call them refusal to participate till they actually accepted to participate. And therefore, you can compare those that were easy to recruit to those that were hard to recruit, and see how much there is a difference between the two. And again, you can come up with a conclusion of how much your attrition or mortality or refusal to participate bias is or is not a problem. Diffusion of treatment. This is we kind of discussed this when we were talking about randomization, and I told you that there are different types of randomization, and I said one type of randomization is cluster randomization, and this is done when you either cannot randomize individuals or you're worried about diffusion of treatment. Diffusion of treatment happens when a group of people that maybe have a certain outcome. The AIDS communities, they know each other, they talk to each other, they support each other, for example, back in the 80s and 90s. And when these group of individuals were recruited in experimental design, because they get to communicate with each other outside the experimental study, maybe they have support groups or what have you, and because they knew that they were all participating in the study, and they knew that there is a 50-50 chance of receiving the treatment or the placebo, they started sharing their pills. They started sharing. Some of them had the experimental pills, some of them had the placebo pills, and they started sharing their pills, therefore diffusing the treatment. This can also happen if you're providing a group of people with education material or مثلا exercise material. And مثلا, I can randomize students into two groups: a group that is going to receive online training, and a group that will not receive an online treatment. But at the same time, I know that these students get together, and they have their groups of friends, or maybe in the dorms, and they could discuss the training material that I gave them, and they can share the training material, and therefore the treatment itself is going to be diffused between those that were allocated to be in the treatment arm versus those that were allocated to be in the intervention arm. And so the way to fix that problem, as we discussed earlier, if you can do cluster randomization, that would be much better. The experimental effect is a bias that occurs when the experimenter, him or herself, I'm going to put it easy, maybe they have a lot of uh, they're eloquent. They have a good way of communicating ideas. Their non-verbal cues are very effective, and therefore, when these experimenter people are doing the intervention, maybe the intervention is an education program. A lot of the of the impact is not because of the material, rather because of the personal characteristics of the researcher, and therefore the impact is going to be due to the experimenter effect rather than the actual effect of the intervention. هلا أنا I joke, I say this is the كله تمام حكيم. When people are their physician, they go to see their physician and their physician asks them about their medication and how is it going. Well, it depends how your physician is going to ask you. Many times the physicians are adamant about, yeah, well, it works, yeah, well, you should be doing, and you end up saying yes, it works, not because it actually works, but because of the physician. And so here, the way you fix that problem is by training the experimenter to be as objective as possible and as non-influential as possible, so that the effect is purely the effect of the intervention, not the effect of who is giving the intervention. Number 9 is the Hawthorne Effect, and it's called Hawthorne Effect after the where they discovered this bias. There was I think it's a company that was called the Hawthorne Company, and the people running the company wanted to know what can we do to increase the productivity of our workers. And actually, I have it here, right here. It's the Hawthorne plant of the Western Electric Corporation. So they wanted to know what can we do to increase the production of our employer. So they got a group of scientists that came in. They were all dressed in white with pads and notes and looking at people and observing people. And they started, doing their experiment. Well, maybe changing the light, changing the working hours, maybe adding music. I mean, you can think of the different things that you can do while they were there observing the people. So if you worked there, no matter if they increased the light of the environment where you worked or not, whether they decreased the noise or not, you had somebody observing you. And that by itself created what is called the Hawthorne Effect, where people started doing, performing better no matter what you do. You increase the light, they perform better. You decrease the light, they perform better. You control the noise, they perform better. You uncontrol the noise, they perform better. Well, this is because, there's people observing them, looking at them, and they felt observed. So that's the observer bias, the Hawthorne effect bias. And therefore, many times they try to conceal that you're observing people to hide the impact of being observed. And you probably have seen a lot of this when, they bring kids and they make them play in a playroom, and they're being observed behind a fake mirror. طبعا there's the issue of how ethical this is, and when do you debrief, when do you get the consent for them to be part of the study, etc., etc. But you get the idea. If you can take out the observer as much as possible, that would be perfect. And a very close idea to that is when you're doing a survey and you're having people filling out the questionnaire. The people that are going to ask you the questions, these people have to be trained. They have to be trained in terms of how to ask the question, in terms of how to behave, how to appear objective, how to appear non-judgmental, so that the data you're collecting is not affected by the interviewer, not the interviewer. So it's a similar idea. Here you have a table that kind of lists the threats and what designs are mostly likely affected by these threats. And that concludes the part where we discuss the internal validity threats or the biases. Okay.